Did you know that some Pokemon have exclusive items that only work for them, and they grant special powers? One of the Pokemon that gets a signature item is Pikachu, the mascot of the whole franchise. Pikachu is able to equip the Light Ball item, which has an unbelievable effect more powerful than most items in the game, granting double attack power to all attacks. Even though Pikachu is a terrible Pokemon, not even fully evolved and with terrible stats. Because it has access to this exclusive item, it actually has some competitive uses sometimes. These signature items can have this effect. They can take an otherwise terrible Pokemon and give them something to live for, something to be used for. Why don't we take a look at every single signature item in the Pokemon series and rank them competitively? Now this is kind of a hard ranking to do because these items are exclusive to just one Pokemon each. Meaning, I don't think this ranking would be that interesting if I just ranked these items in a vacuum. Because then I think Light Ball would be the best, if we pretend that any Pokemon could use it. But I think I would like to evaluate these items in the context of the Pokemon that can use them specifically. How worthwhile is that item on the Pokemon compared to other options? How much does it improve the Pokemon, and how good is the Pokemon at the end of the day thanks to this item? That is the criteria I'm going to go off for this list. Some items I'm not going to include on the list are items that transform a Pokemon into a special form without any other added effect, like the Zacian Rusted Sword and Zamazenta's Rusted Shield. I also won't be including Mega Stones, Ultra Necrosium Z, and I won't be including Arceus's plate items or Silvali's memory items, which just change their type and give them some type damage. It's kind of hard to evaluate those, and there's a lot of them. Genesect also has the drive items that change the type of its move. Techno Blast, kind of a boring series of signature items, honestly, and hard to evaluate, so I won't include those either. But first, in more important news, the mysterious figure who was seen conspiring with Macago has been officially identified. This is none other than Cuptonio, an infamous vigilante known for taking extreme and controversial actions in times of unrest. In a very strategic move, Cuptonio has placed 3 layers of spikes outside the door of Garfield Eats. If the infamous Iron Fellow ever wants to leave his favorite restaurant, he's going to take an unbelievable 25% of his total HP in damage. The opposition's hand has been forced, and they are now negotiating terms. Has Cuptonio gone too far? Do the ends justify the means? Only by subscribing to the channel can we hope to answer this moral quandary. Thank you. At the very bottom of the list, I think we'd have to put an exclusive signature item that many of you probably aren't even aware of. It's an exclusive item for Ditto called the Quick Powder. Quick Powder only works if held by a Ditto that hasn't transformed yet, and while equipped it grants double speed to the Ditto. This item was introduced to the series in Gen 4, and even though doubling speed is a very good effect that any other Pokemon would appreciate, Ditto is so atrocious that this does not help it very much. In fact, it's not even the best item to run on Ditto if you're using it. It's better to run a Focus Sash, because that at least lets you live a hit and guarantee getting the transform off. Ditto, of course, only learns transform in this generation, and this is before Imposter was an ability that automatically transforms you, so you have to manually click transform. Of course, this item is aiming to make Ditto a little bit better at transforming into the enemy, but it's not enough. It's not enough, and this barely improves the Pokemon. Up next on the list is another item for Ditto, the Metal Powder, which, instead of granting double speed, grants double defense. The reason I think this is a bit better is because at least with double defense, you might be able to live a hit and transform in Gens 2 and 3, because this did come out earlier, before Focus Sash existed. So I suppose you could use this on Ditto. And Ditto is so slow that it doesn't get much out of the Quick Powder anyway. Even then though, it's funny because Ditto is strictly worse than Smeargle, who also learns transform and can learn other moves on top of that. And neither of these items were worth a damn in Gen 5 onwards, of course, because Ditto gained the new ability Imposter, allowing it to transform into the enemy Pokemon instantly upon switching onto the field. So it doesn't need any help from these items, and in fact, running these items is completely useless. They only work if Ditto hasn't transformed yet, so what the hell is the point if Ditto immediately transforms? This pair of items is completely obsolete. And you're better off running a choice scarf on Ditto to let it outrun the transformed enemy, if you're using it. Up next is an item exclusive to the Pokemon Farfetch'd, and it is called the Stick. If Farfetch'd is holding the stick, it has a doubled critical hit ratio, which is a pretty powerful effect, of course. But Farfetch'd is not a Pokemon that can make very good use of this concept. Farfetch'd is terrible in the attack department with only 65 base attack. Its defenses are horrendous, and it can scarcely outrun anything to get a hit in the books with a truly terrible base 60 speed. Even if you do land a crit, is it gonna do that much damage? Probably not. For this to be worth it, Farfetch'd would have to crit every single turn, which is just not likely. A lot of the time you're still not gonna crit. And even if you are critting frequently, you're Farfetch'd and you're doing very little. This is hardly elevating Farfetch'd from its low tier status. It really doesn't help that Farfetch'd itself is a normal flying type, and just about every competitive tier has one of these that is better than Farfetch'd. It's one of the most common typings in the game. Even with the stick, you're paling in comparison to like Unpheasant or something. I'm sorry to tell you. Up next is the Deep Sea Scale, which is exclusive to the Pokemon Clamperl. The Deep Sea Scale grants double special defense if held by Clamperl. Once again, a great effect, just not fantastic on this Pokemon. Clamperl is not fully evolved, meaning its stats are very bad. It has measly 35 HP and a 55 special defense. You can achieve a pretty good special defense stat with this, but common attacking types like Electric and Grass are super effective against Clamperl anyway, meaning the extra bulk is probably not going to help you out. On top of this, you have a pretty poor move pool for a defensive item like this, with no reliable healing option, no good utility to take advantage of a special defense boost. It's just not a good fit, and it is never used on Clamperl. On another Pokemon, this could be an elite level item that turns them into an incredible choice, but on Clamperl, not so much. Up next is one that some might disagree with, but I actually think this exclusive item is pretty bad. The Gracious Orb, which is exclusive to Giratina. The Gracious Orb, if held by Giratina, grants 1.2x power to Ghost and Dragon type attacks. Now, of course, you need to be holding this item to become Giratina Origin, and it's the only item Giratina Origin can hold, but I think if Giratina Origin could hold different items, it probably would, and I don't think this would be the best item on it. As for Giratina's base form is never using this item, as Giratina is primarily a defensive legendary. It's mostly used for its fantastic defensive typing in bulk, with Rest, Will-O-Wisp, options like that, Dragon Tail, some defense and utility. Extra Dragon and Ghost type damage is absolutely useless on a Pokemon like Giratina, and I could never see base form Giratina using this. If Giratina Origin had the choice of using an item, this would still be a decent choice for it, since it commonly uses Dragon and Ghost Stab, but once again, I don't think it would be the most popular. Probably that would be Leftovers, or a Type Berry or something to give it an extra turn to live. That's just my opinion there. I don't think the Gracious Orb is very good as an exclusive item. Up next is the Adamant Orb, used by Dialga exclusively. And this item grants Dialga 1.2x damage to its Steel and Dragon type attacks. In early Gen Ubers formats, Gen 4 and 5, where Dialga was first popular and competitive, its most common item was Leftovers, not Adamant Orb. But it would sometimes use Adamant Orb on mixed attacking sets or some offensive sets. But the thing about it was that back then Steel was a pretty terrible attacking type, and you would only be using it for the Dragon type damage, really. Dialga would rarely, if ever, run Steel type attacks at this time. So this Adamant Orb is basically the exact same as running like a Draco Plate, a generic item that increases just Dragon type damage and can be used by any Pokemon. So the only advantage the Adamant Orb has over this is that if a Latios or another Dragon type tricks Dialga, switching items, they don't get to use the Dragon type boost themselves because it only works on Dialga. There's a bit of trick insurance, but that's literally the only benefit to running Adamant Orb over something like Draco Plate. In Gen 6, Steel type damage did get a little bit better, meaning the Steel type boost is more useful, but in Gen 6 and 7 Ubers, Dialga would never use Adamant Orb because it's much more imperative that it runs a Sugar Berry to be able to survive hits from Primal Groudon. So the Adamant Orb is also a pretty bad item, but I put it above the Gracious Orb because it at least has some use in early gen Ubers. But even then, it's not the most popular item, and it's barely better than a generic item any Pokemon could get. There's like a tiny difference. And the best of these trio of orb items on the Gen 4 legendaries would be Palkia's, the Lustrous Orb. If held by Palkia, this grants a 1.2x bonus to water and dragon type attacks. This is the best and most fitting bonus for any of them, because Palkia excels as an offensive Pokemon, and it uses both of its stab types, water and dragon, on most of its sets. This makes Lustrous Orb actually better than most other type boosting items in the game, and worthwhile to run on a Palkia. That being said, it's still not the most popular item on Palkia generally. Probably Choice Scarf is the more popular, or like Haban Berry. But Lustrous Orb still sees use, and it sees the most use of any of the orbs of these Gen 4 legendaries. And as an exclusive item, it does work on the Pokemon, it's fitting, and it's pretty good. It's a pretty good item. Up next, we are once again returning to Clamperl, because Clamperl is the only Pokemon in the franchise with 2 different exclusive items. The other one is much better than the Deep Sea Scale. It is, of course, the Deep Sea Tooth. If held by Clamperl, this grants doubled special attack. And this item right here turns Clamperl from an otherwise nothing Pokemon that nobody would ever use into a genuine threat that can actually work in tiers like Gen 4 UU and other low tiers throughout the series. Clamperl has only 74 base special attack, but thanks to full EV investment, a modest nature, and this Deep Sea Tooth item, it can achieve up to 540 special attack, which is more powerful than just about every legendary in the game. Now, the problem, of course, is that Clamperl is incredibly slow and incredibly frail, so it needs the support of something like Trick Room, maybe Paralysis, or just slow pivots to help it get in against whatever could be slower than it to actually pose a threat. But there's no doubt that it does pose a threat, and it even has pretty good coverage with Surf, Ice Beam, serving you pretty well, Hidden Power, of course, rounding things out. You can even use Brine, which deals double damage if the target is below half HP. Helps you get some more KOs you otherwise wouldn't. So even though Clamperl with the Deep Sea Tooth is not as good of a Pokemon as Giratina with a Gracious Orb, I want to evaluate how much the item improves the guy, how good of a fit it is on the Pokemon. And Deep Sea Tooth is Clamperl's best item by far, and it turns it from an otherwise completely crap Pokemon into sometimes being competitively worth considering. So I consider that to be valuable, and I think this is a very good exclusive item. Now, up next we have Pikachu with its Light Ball, mentioned in the introduction. And what's interesting about the Light Ball is that it actually got buffed after a couple games. The Light Ball was first introduced back in Gen 2, where it had the same effect as Clamperl's Deep Sea Tooth, granting double special attack. And Pikachu is kind of similar to Clamperl in that it's a not fully evolved Pokemon with very poor stats, but Pikachu is a little bit better than Clamperl is, isn't it? It actually has a serviceable speed stat of base 90. That is decent. That can actually outrun some stuff. And it is very frail, but the speed is doing some serious heavy lifting, and it means Pikachu needs less support to be a threat. On top of that, it is an electric type with Stab Thunderbolt. Hidden Power rounds out electric coverage very easily, and then you have Encore as a disruptive utility option that can actually also give you more options and opportunity to be useful in a battle, as well as the ability Static being more useful than what Clamperl has, which is Shell Armor. Not very good. So that's all. So Pikachu is a pretty reasonable Pokemon with the Light Ball, even in its original state where it just buffed special attack. But in Gen 4, they buffed Light Ball further, and it grants double attack power to all attacks, including physical ones. If this was an item that anything in the game could equip, it probably would be the best item in the whole game. It would be. Now, Pikachu doesn't get that much out of the physical attack power because of its pretty limited physical move pool, but it does get interesting options like Focus Punch for a prediction move that can hit something like a Blissey kind of come in. And the Light Ball increasing the damage of that is significant. Much like Clamperl, this exclusive item is turning an otherwise useless Pokemon that no one would ever use in any context into a genuine option sometimes. And Pikachu is an even more genuine option than Clamperl is, succeeding in many more instances and just getting way more out of this exclusive item. Up next is Marowak, with its item the Thick Club. If held by a Cubone or Marowak, this grants double attack. Even though this effect is strictly worse than the Light Ball, the Pokemon that gets it is so much better at taking advantage of the boost. Marowak is actually a fully evolved Pokemon, unlike Pikachu. It actually has some bulk to speak of, with 110 base defense and a ground typing. 80 base attack, which then gets doubled, is really powerful, and this is enough for Marowak to be an OU Pokemon in Gen 2, and a viable choice as well in Gen 3 OU, ranked in UUBL. In fact, Marowak is probably the best Pokemon in the game at receiving speed boosts in Gen 3. Pattern passing speed boosts to Marowak and letting its Swords Dance can sometimes just instantly win you the whole game. It's a pretty cheesy strategy, but it can win instantly like nothing else in the whole game. Ground typing is great. With Stab, Earthquake, you even have Swords Dance, Rock Slide for coverage, and options like Double Edge with Rock Head for neutral damage, Focus Punch. In the early gens you have Hidden Power, which can be physical. This Pokemon is just very well suited to the physical Wall Breaker role, and the double attack serves it incredibly well. Beyond Gen 3, Marowak is still used in the UU tiers, and in Gen 7, a new Alolan Marowak was introduced, who can also use the Thick Club. Alolan Marowak has a Fire Ghost typing, which is very good offensively. There's plenty of great stab options on the physical side to take advantage of that, especially Flare Blitz, which ignores the recoil thanks to Rock Head. And Alolan Marowak is viable in OU tiers. It may not be ranked in OU in Gen 7 or 8, but it can be used as a wall breaker thanks to that incredible Thick Club. So I think that the Thick Club enhances Marowak and its Alolan form so much that it deserves to be very high up on the list. Now the next one on the list might sound crazy, and it's technically multiple items at once, but they all have an identical effect, and they are exclusive to Ogerpon. I'm talking about Ogerpon's mask items. These items, when used by Ogerpon, can change it into different forms, like the Hearthflame form and the Cornerstone form. Not only does it make them change into different forms, it also has a flat effect that is incredibly powerful. It just grants a 1.2x power boost to all attacks. Now 1.2x power to all attacks seems pretty tame compared to some other effects we've covered in this video, like the Light Ball and the Thick Club, which double damage output. But the difference here, I think, is that this 1.2x power boost that Ogerpon can get on all of its different mask forms with this item is so much more impactful because of how good Ogerpon and its forms are. Ogerpon Hearthflame is so powerful that they banned it from Gen 9 OU, remember. And part of its power is the fact that it has this mask item. Now, it can only equip the mask item, it can't equip anything else, kind of like Giratina Origin, but I think if it could choose to equip something, it probably would choose to equip this mask. It's kind of like an Expert Belt or any of the other 1.2x damage effects like Never Melt Ice or Dark Glasses, but it applies to everything, and it has no drawback like a Life Orb does. I think if this item was widely usable by any Pokemon in the game, it probably would be used over Life Orb. And it would absolutely outclass plenty of items that are already used competitively, like Expert Belt and Black Glasses. The fact that these Ogerpons get this damage boost is part of why they're so powerful, and Ogerpon Wellspring is currently one of the most controversial Pokemon in Gen 9 OU because of how immediately threatening and great it is. It has such incredible traits even without this exclusive item, like Water Absorb, its fantastic typing, great step moves, Ivy Cudgel, which has a high crit rate, and incredible stats as well, high speed attack and solid well-rounded bulk. This 1.2x power is just icing on the cake of an already excellent Pokemon. So even though the effect of this item is not as good as the effect of something like Light Ball, it's available on a Pokemon that is so much better, and in that sense, I think the Ogerpon masks deserve to be very high up on here. It is an incredibly powerful effect that any offensive Pokemon would love to have access to. Imagine if something like Dragapult could also use such an item. It would probably be the best item on it too. And finally, the best exclusive item in the game, in my opinion, is Soul Dew, available only to the Lati twins, Latios and Latias. If Ogerpon's masks were so high and they only grant 1.2x power, think about this. Soul Dew, if held by Latias and Latios, grants 1.5x to special attack and special defense. That is an enormous boost, way better than the vast majority of items in the whole game. And the Pokemon that gets to use it is a legendary with incredible stats superior to that of Ogerpon Wellspring. I mean, look at this. Latios here has 130 special attack, 110 special defense base. And with the Soul Dew equipped, you basically get a free Calm Mind as soon as the game begins. As a result of the Soul Dew, Latios is literally the best Pokemon in Gen 3 Ubers. Not many people know this, but Latios is number 1, outranking both Kyogre and Groudon. With the Soul Dew is an incredible threat. Its typing is excellent, its ability to levitate is excellent, it has Ice Beam, Thunder for Kyogre, or Thunderbolt if you want more accuracy, Recover, Dragon Claw for Stab, Calm Mind if you want to go even further. And Latias is no slouch either, the more bulky variant of the Lati twins that gets an incredible defensive boost from the Soul Dew. Latios and Latias are of course Uber's level threats for a very long time, thanks to the Soul Dew. In Gen 5, these two fell down to OU for the first time, but their item Soul Dew was still banned. The Soul Dew boosted them so significantly that it made them too powerful, and using Latios or Latias with Soul Dew was only available in Ubers. Soul Dew did eventually get nerfed to only provide a damage boost to Dragon and Psychic moves, way worse than its previous effect, but I think that the many generations of this item making these two Ubers level threats, the sheer amount that it boosts an already incredible Pokemon, and just the sheer impact of this makes it, in my eyes, the best signature item in the entire Pokemon series. But what do you think, folks? Do you think I got anything wrong here? Failed to evaluate the deep sea scale or something correctly? Do you even agree with the way I ranked these? I feel like this was the most interesting way to rank them. But perhaps I'm wrong about that. Let me know down below in the comments, and thank you for watching.